most adults kind of turn to self-help or personal development when they're kind of in a rough patch or want to change something about themselves. But as a kid who's brand new, who doesn't have all these like hang-ups and stuff, it doesn't make sense. Like, why do I need to save my life every day?
Welcome to the Marvelous Moms Club podcast. Discover yourself, break out of mediocrity, and become the mom you've always aspired to be. Here's your host, Kirsten Tyrell.
Hey everybody, welcome to another episode of Marvelous Moms Club. This is a special one. This is a really special one. I'm going to tell you why in just a minute, but I'm super excited to have Lindsay here. She is the author of The Miracle Morning for Parents, and if you guys have never heard me talk about Miracle Morning, then that's a sin, because it's basically the first thing I ever read before I started Marvelous Moms Club. It's the reason that I started Marvelous Moms Club, or had the capacity to. So before we go into that anymore, welcome to the show, Lindsay. I'm so excited to have you here.
Yeah, thank you for having me. I'm equally as excited. So
I mean, I don't know that you can really match my excitement, but I'll let you try. So give everybody a little bit of your mommy background. I love your lifestyle. It's one that I've tried to do myself that I completely failed at with homeschooling and everything. But tell everybody how many kids you have, ages, stages, all that fun stuff.
Yeah, so I have two kiddos. Tyler, the oldest, is 9, and our daughter, Ember, is 5. And yeah, we've been homeschooling for 3 years now. And last year, we just started splitting time between Colorado and Pennsylvania. So I'm from Pennsylvania, and my husband grew up in Colorado.
Wow.
And last year, we bought a house out there, and it seemed only fair that we would spend half of our time there. So we do spring and fall in Pennsylvania, and winter and summer in Colorado now.
Oh my gosh, you chose, I mean, and maybe both places wouldn't be fantastic for winter, but I was surprised for you to say winter in Colorado. Is it more mild than it would be in Pennsylvania?
It is in the city, but we live in the mountains on purpose because my husband, he's really into snowboarding. So
okay, that's the missing link in my brain, is I'm not like an outdoorsy ski person. So I'm like, why would you choose? But that makes so much more sense. That's awesome.
Yeah, and our 9-year-old this winter, he started really getting into snowboarding too, and
cool.
We put him in this program called Park Rats, so he gets to learn how to do all the tricks and stuff. And he's slightly obsessed now. Now he's so like, cool. I want to live here forever and snowboard every day. I'm like, okay.
That is so cool. I love that though, because I have a friend who lives 6 months in one place, 6 months in another, but it sounds like you're really 3 months on and then 3 months off, which is a little bit more variety. Is it a pain, or have you guys really loved it? Like, do you think you'll keep it going forever?
I don't know if we'll do it forever. We don't really do anything forever. So,
touche. Yeah, but nobody really does.
But right now, it's working. It is cool. I think because it's 2 full houses. You know, we just keep stuff there, and we keep stuff here, and it's not as big of a pain as you might think.
Right. But do you ever go for like a certain shirt or pair of shoes and you're like, it's in Pennsylvania or it's in Colorado?
Not really.
That's
but
good.
I'm super laid back and easygoing, so I'm like, I'll just wear these sweatpants instead of the other ones.
Well, I guess that's why it works for you then, if you're super laid back and easygoing. Somebody who's super, super type A would probably have a really hard time having 2 different lifestyles in 2 very different places, but that's really cool. I love that. My husband and I have talked about like having an adventure, moving somewhere else and experiencing something for a while. And I'm like, but what, it's going to be like The Bachelor, like falling in love with 2 people. And then what if we love it there and we never want to come back, but we miss our family? So maybe that's just something we'll have to look into as a possibility. I don't know. 2 houses, 2 lives.
Yeah. 2 lives.
Cool. Okay.
But, I mean, we have friends all over the country too. So even when we're like home at one place or the other, it's basically just home base, and then we travel from there. So
that's awesome. I love that. And you're into, like, your houses are in 2 very different parts of the country. So wherever you are, that's the region you get to kind of hang out with, which is what I really, really love. I have a lot of friends in the South, and on the East Coast. And I'm like, oh, it's just not going to be convenient to see them. But if we live a little bit closer, then that can be the season for those visits. So that's awesome. You see, this is why I love this show. I always talk to people who I love to pick their brain. And it's like, oh, wait, no, there's like thousands of people listening. Maybe we should actually have a conversation that serves
All
them.
right.
It's fine.
That other people care about.
Yeah. Whatever. So you tell me about how you kind of came into the fold of Miracle Morning and how you kind of adapted it and how that project and process worked in writing Miracle Morning for parents. Or is it for moms?
So
am I saying it right? Is it for parents or for moms?
It's for parents and families, technically,
Got it.
is the title.
Okay.
Yeah. So my husband and I are involved with this nonprofit called One Life Fully Lived.
Uh-huh.
It was founded by our friend Tim Rode. And in 2010 is when it started. We kind of went to the first one, and then we took a couple years off because we had little kids.
Mm-hmm.
And in 2014, Tim called us up and he said, you guys will not believe how this thing has grown. Get your butts back here. And we're like, okay.
Awesome.
So we went to his conference. At the time it was in Reno, Nevada. And Hal Elrod happened to be the keynote speaker.
Awesome.
And this was when Miracle Morning was still kind of new. Mm-hmm. And he wasn't very well known yet. So we're like, never heard of this guy, whatever, we'll come. So we go to this conference and hear Hal's story. And at that time, we had two pretty young kids. Tyler was 5, I guess, and Emmy was still just 1.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe 2. I guess she was 2, and Ty was 6. And so we hear Hal speak, and the guy literally died and came back to life and kind of used the Miracle Morning as the catalyst for that.
Mm-hmm.
And so I had been using having 2 young kids as an excuse as to why I couldn't, live this dream life that I wanted to live.
Mm-hmm.
I was kind of stuck in this, in the day-to-day of being a young mom. And after hearing Hal, I was like, you know what? I got to stop using them as an excuse. So my husband and I were like, we're going to do this Miracle Morning thing. We're going to commit to it, get up early. And then as soon as we started getting up earlier, so did our kids. And we're like,
that's what happened for me. Oh my gosh. You're about to solve a problem I think I've had, aren't you? That's what I'm sensing.
Okay.
Something's about to happen.
I hope. Right.
Yeah.
So then we were like, what the heck? What gives? Like, we're committed to this thing.
Yes.
So at first, we kind of like put them in front of the TV so we could finish our thing. And then, kind of trying to rip them away from the television after that was not ideal. And then it took my 2-year-old Ember came to me and said, Mommy, I want to do what you're doing. And I was like, you do? I'm like, oh.
What? Mind blown.
Mind blown. Yeah. Light bulb goes off. I'm like, oh, okay. Yeah. Like, why don't we teach them how to do this too?
Right.
And so that's what we did. We started teaching them pieces of the Miracle Morning. And in this process, they kind of created their own version of it. And so fast forward, we see Hal again at One Life in 2015. And Mike and I were also presenters at that One Life. So they do this welcome reception for all the presenters on Friday night. And on Friday night, I go up to Hal and I'm like, hey, man, I just want to tell you, we've been doing the Miracle Morning as a family for the past year. And it's been awesome. Like, we've been teaching our kids the savers. And he's like, wait, your kids do this? He's like, this is so cool. He's like, tell me all about this. I'm like, well, Tyler, our son, was at the conference. I'm like, he's here. Like, you can meet him. And he's like, yeah, bring him to breakfast tomorrow. So we bring Ty to breakfast in the morning, and he has his homemade affirmation book. He's saying his affirmations for Hal Elrod.
Oh my gosh.
And Hal's mind is being blown. And he's like, this is the coolest thing I've ever seen. He's like, can I take pictures of this? And like, I want to feature you guys on something. We're like, yeah, whatever, man. And
it's just our life.
A couple
no
weeks,
big deal.
Yeah, whatever. A couple weeks later, I woke up with these poems in my head, and I wrote them all down, and like, I was coming up with all these other things that we could do with our kids with the Miracle Morning in mind. And I sent it to my husband because I was too scared to send it to Hal first. And Mike reassured me that it was good. And then he said, you should send this to Hal. So I sent it to Hal with a little message that just said, hey, I know you're working on something for kids. If this is useful, it's yours. Mm-hmm. And he wrote back the next day and he was like, I think you need to write a book with me for parents. And I was like,
oh my gosh.
Whoa.
You probably almost died.
Yeah. I was like, that's way outside my comfort zone. I'm like, I'm not a writer. He's like, it's okay. Either am I.
I love that.
So that's kind of how it came about. And, we signed the contract, and 6 months later, we had a book on Amazon.
That's incredible. And it's done really well, right? Like, I feel like any of those sister books that go with the main idea that are going to appeal to that audience they have to be successful. It has to have helped so many different families put that into practice that maybe we're trying, like me, to differentiate it from this is something for me and something needs to happen differently for my family, but being able to unify it, I'm sure has been really powerful.
Yeah. And I think, in writing the book, we wrote it together, my husband and I, and even the kids were heavily involved because, so in the book, there's a new acronym for kids. So we took the original SAVERS, which stands for silence, affirmation, visualization, exercise, reading, and scribing. And we kind of adapted it for kids and created a new acronym called CHARMS.
I love it.
And that stands for creativity, health, affirmations, reading, meditation, and service. So what we kind of found in this experiment is that, Tyler came to me and he's like, Mommy, I don't get it. Why do I have to save my life every day? I was like, oh, I'm like, but like when you think of it from their perspective, like most adults kind of turn to self-help or personal development when they're kind of in a rough patch or want to change something about themselves.
Right.
But as a kid who's brand new, who doesn't have all these like hangups and stuff, it doesn't make sense. Like, Why do I need to save my life every day?
That is so true. What a funny, smart perspective.
Yeah. So then I was like, yeah, buddy, we don't have to call it SAVERS. Like, what do you want to call it? And at 2 and 6, scribing, writing was pretty difficult for them. Mm-hmm. So we kind of threw that out the window and said, let's just call it creativity. And you guys can paint, you can draw, you can color, you can play with Play-Doh, you can make up a skit, you can play with your stuffed animals. Like, you can do whatever you want, but you have to do it independently.
Mm-hmm. Right.
So they have this whole like art center set up in our kitchen, and every morning they come down and they just have free range of, paints and markers and paper, and they can do whatever they want as long as they leave Mommy alone to journal.
Nice. That's so awesome. That's a really cool, that's a really, because I wouldn't have even thought of that. I would have gone home without even reading the book and been like, we're all going to do Miracle Morning. And wouldn't have even thought, oh wait, I have a 3-year-old who can't write. And I have a 6-year-old who's just learning how to write. So that's a really cool adaptation.
And they do each have their own journals. Mm-hmm. And sometimes now at 9, Tyler will actually write something. And then Emmy, she's just kind of scribbles in her journal. And she's really into drawing hearts right now. So most mornings, that's her creativity, is drawing hearts.
Over and over and over, all sizes, all colors.
Yep, exactly. Awesome. I'm like, you go, girl. I'm like, I love it.
So cute.
And then the rest of them, so we wanted to expand on exercise for them and include a healthy breakfast. So we called that health. And it includes, like brush your teeth, brush your hair, get dressed, eat breakfast, and move your body. And, moving their body, it's basically like, just get your heart rate up. Like, let's have a dance party in the kitchen, or we can do some body weight exercises. It's not like I want them pumping iron in the morning or anything.
Not quite yet, but that's so cool because as they get older, they will already have that habit for their whole life now.
Right.
That's awesome.
Yeah. I mean, that's been the coolest thing through this process, is really just solidifying our family values. And really our family values are the charms. So now we get to reiterate that every morning with our kids, like, this is what's important to us. So these are the things we're going to do the first thing every day.
That's so awesome. I love it. I need this in my life so much. Like, I can't even tell you. This is why I do this show. Like, okay, I say that I have so many different reasons. I say these are all my favorite parts, but like, really, truly, this is one of the main reasons that I keep doing this, or that I've come back to it even after taking a little break from it, is like, this is my personal development right here, is having these calls, having other people's perspective kind of awaken me to, like, because it's easy to get into a rut of thinking this is my reality, this is what I'm capable of. And not being really, it's not that you're not open to change, it's just you don't even know how you can change. You don't even know what else is possible. So I love that you're coming on here and sharing this, because of what it sounds like to me, and what I think a lot of us can like relate to. It's not like you woke up one day and you're like, I have this really cool idea, this amazing concept. It was an evolution of time, of you slowly changing your own habits, spilling over into your children's habits, which is parenting, right? Like, we're an example to our kids. It's no shock that your 2-year-old would watch you do this every day and want to participate, because we are our children's heroes and they want to do what we're doing. And so setting that tone wasn't something you just picked up a book and like all of a sudden you were like, kids, we're all doing this. Even though the rest of us can now take your book and say, I'm going to start this. And it doesn't have to be this big thing. It's just slowly implementing new change and habits. And I love that you said family values, because that is a word that came to me like a couple months ago, where I was like, we need to establish some serious family values so that we know at our core, like, what lifestyle things fit and what don't fit for our family. So I love that. I think that's so amazing.
Yeah. And actually in the book, we have this whole like family values exercise that you can do to kind of pull those out and figure out what it looks like for your family. Because, you know, all families are different.
Yeah.
And your family values are not going to be the same as ours necessarily.
Mm-hmm. So because you were waking up earlier and your kids were waking up early anyway, is this something where they automatically just wake up at the same time every day? And are you guys like prone to not even having to set an alarm? Or do the kids, like, with purpose and intent, like, set an alarm to get up at a certain time?
My kids don't have an alarm. Sometimes they're my alarm, but
right.
On the days they wake up early and I'm like, what the heck? Like, go back to bed.
It's not time yet.
And that's kind of where our book is a little different than the original too, is ours is a little softer, and like there's a section in there about having flexibility, where I feel like the original one is very like rigid and masculine, and you know, like, no excuses. I'm like,
you wake up at 4.
There is an excuse.
That's good to know, because that is, see, for us, like, we were trying, it was such a, like, I wish there had been hidden cameras in our house to show how carefully we tried to navigate that miracle morning hour without waking our children up. Like, there were times we wouldn't even move out of our beds, and we'd go through as much of it as we could without touching a toe to the floor. But then you have to go to the bathroom when you wake up, and you're like, this is miserable. And they'd still wake up, so we would bump it earlier and earlier to the point where we're getting up at 4 o'clock. But we have very young children, and yes, you adapt, but like, it just didn't work long term. It wasn't something, you know, you can stay committed to. It has to still be somewhat flexible and somewhat of a reality, and not completely changing habits that have existed for like 30 years of your life. So,
right.
I love that. I'm glad it has a little bit more flexibility.
And we also found too that as soon as we invited them into what we were doing, they weren't as interested. You know, they're like, oh, wait, I have to do something? Like, I think I'd rather sleep.
Yeah. Maybe that's my cure to get my children to sleep in a little bit longer. I don't know. So, that's another thing I was going to ask is, like, was there ever a point where that was a struggle? Or now is it just something everybody loves and accepts? Like, are there days when everybody just totally fails and doesn't do it?
Oh, yeah. I mean, we're human beings. We fail all the time.
Yeah. Well, that's good.
In fact, right now, we're super jet lagged because we just got back to Pennsylvania 2 days ago and we're still on Colorado time. So waking up early on the East Coast coming from the Midwest is It's hard.
Yeah, you have to have an adjustment.
Our bodies have not quite adjusted yet. So
Yeah.
the last couple of days have been, we'll do like the 6-minute version just to hold the habit in place.
Mm-hmm.
And on some days when we don't get it in the morning, in our house, we have a rule that there's no electronic time before your charms are done for the kids. So, well, and for the grown-ups too, actually.
Yeah.
So if they didn't get it in the morning when they get back from their program or whatever we were doing that day, they usually do it before they can jump on any electronics. So that's a little cool motivator for them now.
Yeah. Do you keep any kind of chart? I'm sorry, this is all probably in the book, but I'm just so fascinated. Yeah, do you keep any kind of like accountability chart or anything for them to check off that they've done them all, especially for the younger ones that aren't necessarily for all going to remember what comes next?
Right. We did at the beginning, and you can actually download it online. Cool. I think the website, it's miraclemorning.com/parents. Cool. And if you go there, there's some free downloads. One of them is a CHARMS tracker for the kids. Awesome. And what we did is we laminated it, and then they could check it off with dry erase markers. And then you can wipe it clean each week. Awesome. And they can start. Cool. But now they don't really need that. We've been doing it for almost 3 years now. Wow. And yeah, so now it's just a conversation. It's, hey, Ty, did you do charms today? Yeah. And, he can kind of rattle them off, and he's like, well, I didn't meditate yet. I'm like, okay, let's do that together. And cool. I love this, and I love that we've been able to talk instead of just read the book, and I'm glad people will hear a little bit of perspective on reality too, because just like I said before, it was an evolution. It wasn't an overnight success. Like, I think that's where a lot of people get hung up. I know I do when I try and implement a new routine in my family, and if I miss a day or I fail, then I just kind of throw in the towel, and I'm like, see, like we can't change. But hearing that you still have days where you maybe just have to do it shorter, or you completely miss, because we plan on doing a lot of traveling, and I know that's going to impact our ability to be consistently perfect every day. But I think it's just the intent, and it's having a different kind of purpose and outline for your life without expectation of perfection. And I think that's what a lot of moms need to hear, is you can make positive change and not expect it to be perfect. It's just a slow process, and it's being really patient with yourself. Yeah, and it's this idea of progress over perfection too. Like, yes. Even doing one of the savers or one of the charms is better than doing none of them. Yeah. And even if you only do, a 5-minute meditation, and then the kids are up and in your face, that's better than nothing. Yeah, it's better than what you would have had if you hadn't tried to get up early. Yeah. Cool. Mm-hmm. And I've recently learned this idea of habit stacking too. So like, even if you just start with one of the savers, like say you're just going to do the silence part. And then once you get that kind of down, or like you already have habits in the morning anyway, like most people brush their teeth and their hair, and you eat breakfast, you can stack a habit on top of a habit you already have. So cool. When you hit the button on your coffee maker, that could be a cue to you, like, oh, I need to say my affirmations, and like put a list of affirmations right next to the coffee maker, so it's really easy for you to remember and implement that. That's amazing. I'm so excited to start this tomorrow. I'm excited to get your book. I'm excited for everybody else to read your book. I think it's important. I think it's powerful. I think it's kind of like, in a day where so much is going on, we have to slow down, and we have to take time to implement these small changes into our life, because it's going to make so much more possible. So I really appreciate you coming on. I'm so grateful for you to have written the book in the first place, to have implemented it. This is my favorite type of guest to have, is people who make a change and then they share it with the world, and they make it so the rest of us can grow. So I really appreciate it. And I'm so happy you were here. Yeah. I mean, the book is kind of written like an operations manual for the running of our family. So when Mike and I wrote it, that's kind of what we had in mind. And we're like, this is helpful to other people, great.
Yeah.
And if it's not, take what works and leave the rest.
Yeah. I love that. Operations manual is like the perfect thing you could have possibly said to my brain. Now I'm like, yes, I'm going to pay for overnight shipping. So cool. I love it. Okay, so the question I ask everybody on my show is, what makes you a marvelous mom?
Wow. I don't know. Some days I don't feel very marvelous. But
so you're normal, right? On your best day.
I think just that I really care about their opinion, and I want them to have a say in things. I think growing up, a lot of kids don't really get a lot of say in what's happening in their family. Yeah. And in our family, we kind of make a point to include them in as much as we can.
I love that. And that's evidenced by the whole fact that you have a book that you wrote with very much input from your children. So I think that's the perfect culmination, perfect answer to that question. I completely agree. I can see that from afar. So thank you. I know it's not always an easy one to answer, but it's an empowering question, right? Like, it's an empowering answer.
Mm-hmm.
Forces you to acknowledge that you're actually pretty dang awesome. So well, thank you so much again for being here. Everybody go grab a copy of the book. We'll link to it in the show notes, and we will see you on the next episode. Have a marvelous day.